the massacre site. It's interesting that this has come out because in one of the protests that took place in Sydney, Australia, for a pro-Palestine cause, also had flags of terror groups like the ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But speaking about Kfar Aza and the massacre there, over 100 people, including 40 kids, have reportedly been slaughtered by the Hamas. The Israeli military had earlier claimed that kids were beheaded, which had really shocked the world. As of now, though, we are still waiting for an official confirmation from the Israeli government. But this is also something interesting that happened earlier today. US President Joe Biden spoke about this issue and he said, and I quote, "I never thought I would see such things." He talked about the massacres that took place in Israel and he went on to say, "Have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children." He went on to add, downplaying Hamas's atrocities and blaming Jews is unthinkable. Of course, this was the right message to come from the US president, a message that will go a long way in making sure that Jews are not further isolated and marginalized. But here's the catch. Soon after Joe Biden made that statement, White House came out to clarify that Biden has not actually seen the pictures or confirmed reports independently of young babies being beheaded. His comments, the White House says, are based on Israel's claims and the Israeli media reports. And they also went on to say that Israeli spokesman had said that babies were found with their heads decapitated. Now, there are many news interviews that have been reported on this by what soldiers on ground have told reporters, and many of them had reported this story from Kfar Aza. Some of those statements by Israeli soldiers and commanders of their units that went to these kibbutz are on camera, but of course there is still some confirmation that the world wants to see. I don't know what that confirmation is going to be, where it's going to come, who's going to independently verify any of this, but we'll wait and see. Take a look though at the devastation that has been caused because of this unprovoked, unprecedented attack by Hamas terrorists on Israel, which of course has now expanded this entire clash. So over 1,200 Israelis are now dead. This is the highest toll for Jews since the end of World War II, especially in any given single day, which was 900 when the attack happened first on Saturday. More than 3,000 Israelis are also injured. 130 Israeli soldiers have reportedly been killed, and about 1,600 Hamas terrorists have been killed by Israel. In fact, the IDF had earlier come out to say that 1,500 bodies of Hamas terrorists have been found inside Israel alone, and there are reports that about 1,000 to 2,000 of such perpetrators actually managed to go back to Gaza before they could be caught or retaliated to. Speaking of what is transpiring in Gaza now, over 1,000 people are now reportedly killed in Gaza after Israel launched those counter-strikes. More than 5,000 people are injured. Nearly 260,000 Gazans are also reported to be displaced. Remember, of course, Israel has mounted massive airstrikes. They've pummeled a lot of buildings which are supposed to be of Hamas operatives. Many of them are guised as civilian buildings, but there is, of course, intelligence to suggest that there is a Hamas presence there. They also have their offices or their other bunkers below certain civilian facilities like schools and hospitals. And in this case, Israel is not holding back. They have pummeled Gaza like never before. But the big question is this. A lot of what transpired in Israel on Saturday and Sunday was actually caught on camera. It was uploaded by Hamas terrorists themselves to terrorize the world and to terrorize Jews. And possibly they succeeded. But who are these people who are still defending this unspeakable barbarity, these butchers of babies? We'll take that question to our guests in just a bit.
When our girls are not next to us, they were in the shelter for 16 hours without electricity, with bad connection to the phone. So we, managed to speak with them once in a while. And all the time you hear like tons of shooting over there. Nothing you can describe. And all along you just get messages, like WhatsApp and messages of people that are asking to be to be safe, to be released from the shelters because the terrorists are outside. And it was very bad moments.
Yeah, she's screaming.
This is the time the terrorists got, the clinic was attacked for hours, but this is the time, the second that the terrorists came inside and started butchering people. They shot me. They shot her between the legs. She's telling us that. And she's telling me they are on top of me. And they murdered everyone else. She's saying that.
He kept telling that during that whole time the terrorist was laughing.
They were laughing. They were
and making jokes between them, and just enjoy from those horrors they are making.
And basically, we stayed in the safe room for about 12 hours, locked in the safe room, that we are not allowed to go out of the safe room because they are terrorists, because it's a matter of life and death. And we kept communicating, whispering for 12 hours, so nobody will hear us.
Let's go across to our guest joining us. Professor Eugene Kontrovich is Head of International Law Department, Kohelet Policy Forum, joining us from Jerusalem. Dr. Azrael Bermon is Senior Researcher, Institute of International Relations, Prague, joining us from Jerusalem. Professor Madhav Nalapat is Geopolitical Analyst in India. And Irina Sukerman, Geopolitical Analyst, is also joining us from Washington. Irina, why don't I start with you? I do thank all of our guests for making their time. Just the sheer brutality of what we have witnessed in Israel as part of these Hamas attacks. Do you think that it has really turned the tide as far as support for Israel is concerned in this fight at this very crucial hour, and has also evaporated some of the support for the Palestine movement, given that the Palestinian government till today hasn't really distanced itself from Hamas?
Thank you so much for inviting me and for bringing up this very important topic. I think it's too early to celebrate the turning of the tide. A number of countries have actually blamed Israel for this horrific tragedy, and not just other countries. We have also seen that coming from the top level academia in the United States, like the president of Princeton University, that produces the elites who then take place in governments and corporations all over the country, and who influence public opinion. There is a heated debate on the left about the support for Israel. It's positive that there are many voices speaking out in support, that they are distancing themselves from those voices who are riling up, inciting anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli sentiments. But the fact that this is even an issue of debate is deeply concerning. And the mass pro-Hamas demonstrations all over the United States and Europe are likewise horrifying, because it means there are pockets of support for Hamas-affiliated networks and sympathizers in the middle of Western societies. So while so far the Western countries have condemned Hamas, there's also been a pressure to de-escalate, even as Israel continued to fight Hamas still on its own territories. There were already calls to de-escalate, and there are calls to de-escalate even now when the military...
Yes, it's very shocking. Actually, Irina, I'm very glad you brought that up. There are some words we've heard, and they all sound very nice in international relations. I can even give it to some people that it comes from the right place. But you know, words like de-escalation or a proportionate response. Some bodies have come out and said Israel's response should be proportionate. Now, I don't understand, how do you decide proportionality here? What is the proportionality to kids being butchered and, as some reports suggest, unconfirmed, beheaded in front of their families?
Proportionality in wartime refers to taking measures that are appropriate, the minimum needed to achieve a military goal. Essentially, it's an idea that you don't need to overdo it, just do as much as needed to be done, avoid avoid excessive brutality, excessive force. Nothing that Israel has done can be under the definition considered excessive. They have issued multiple warnings to civilians in Gaza to evacuate. They have called on civilians to be removed to avoid civilian casualties, and for as long as they could engage in surgical strikes to target particular terrorists, which became increasingly difficult over time. I think it's absurd to push Israel to start military actions because Hamas is using its entire population as human shields, as it has. That is what allows Hamas to get away with these horrific crimes, and no one, neither the United States nor any other country, would have held back if they were in the same situation. Which is, I think it's ridiculous to hold Israel to a different standard.
Professor Eugene, are you disappointed that, as Irina was mentioning, the academia, the people who claim to fight the most for liberal causes, for human rights, they are the ones that have come out and almost in some cases unilaterally supported Hamas over Israel?
Two kinds of very disturbing responses. In academia, lots of professors, lots of universities are saying Israel is to blame for these horrible atrocities committed against itself. That this is just what else would you expect people to do? And even more disturbingly now, the head of the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the European Union, have already said that Israel should not be allowed to fight Hamas in a way to allow them to win. Israel has declared a closure of the Gaza Strip. They're not letting anybody or anything in or out. And they said, no, you have to give them electricity, you have to give them food. There's no army in the history of warfare that's been required to feed their enemy. Now, Israel is not trying to punish the civilians of Gaza, the innocents. They're trying to defeat Hamas. And an army fighting another force is allowed to deprive them of food, even if it does have consequences for the for the civilians. But we see in this international response, the reaction of the international community is, oh, we feel so bad about the civilians being massacred, the babies being killed, the women being raped, but you have to let it happen again. You can't win. You have to leave this thorn in your side and this sword hanging perpetually over the head of your people. After the Holocaust, the international community has said never again.
Yes.
And now the UN, the EU is saying it's a shame, but you have to allow it to happen always again. You cannot effectively get rid of Hamas.
Interesting point you made. Dr. Azrael, I want to come to you as well. You're also joining us from Jerusalem. You know, there is this debate happening on social media right now, but also by way of a lot of reportage that is coming in from Israel, where first there were reports by reporters on ground, plus I have seen some soldiers on ground also say this on camera, that when it comes to massacres in Be'eri or Kafr Aza, for example, there were small babies, not only a large number of babies who were killed brutally, but some were beheaded as well. But there is also an insistence from most organizations and agencies, even governments right now, to see some sort of a proof for this. Do you believe that the Israeli government has ascertained what exactly happened, and will they be able to, I don't know how, but convince the rest of the world that is still a little bit skeptical about this, whether this actually happened or not, that yes, this did happen?
Israel has already invited the press into certain parts of the south to see for themselves. So as the awful, gruesome evidence comes to light, I'm sure Israel will you know, it's terribly disturbing. You have to remember, it's also terribly disturbing, upsetting for the families.
Yes.
Who suffered, and I think this is, I personally find this gruesome and this obsession with whether babies were beheaded or not. I find it very upsetting, and the fact is Hamas went out, killed women, children, babies. This is a fact. The fact that you don't need the babies to be beheaded in order to condemn this in the strongest possible terms.
Absolutely.
But Israel is already showing the evidence those people who don't want to believe it, some of those, not all of those, but some of those people are people who don't want to believe it because they may be sympathetic towards Hamas.
Interesting point you're making. This whole whether kids were beheaded or not, or how many of them were beheaded, it's almost being used by some to say, okay, let's not jump to conclusions or let's not judge Hamas just yet because we don't have proof if babies were beheaded. All the other proof that has come out by way of videos and images, this is almost being used as a way to whitewash that. That, it will be barbaric only if kids were beheaded. Do you sense that some people are trying to do that?
Yes, but I just find this whole line of thinking is just bizarre almost. And I think the fact is that Hamas carried out atrocities and something which, something that even Israel could not have imagined. We have to remember something, which is an inconvenient fact here, but Israel under Netanyahu actually helped to strengthen Hamas, allowed Qatari money to come in to Hamas. The argument was that Hamas has no interest in attacking Israel. And we've seen how badly wrong this is. The intelligence got it badly wrong, but Netanyahu himself is culpable. And suddenly the shock that Hamas are behaving like Islamic State. So this is, it's so this, first of all, the awful trauma, the shock, and the suffering of Israeli families, the victims of these awful atrocities. And there's a lot of anger, by the way, with the government over the way.
Yes, I've seen a poll.
Has been so utterly. Very few ministers have visited the hospitals. And when a minister visited yesterday, she was screamed at. She was basically chased out of the hospital. There is anger here with this government, real anger.
Absolutely.
Anger with Hamas, understandable anger with Hamas. But in the days ahead, once this war is over, there will be a huge reckoning with the Netanyahu government.
Absolutely. But, it is still commendable to see there are hundreds and thousands of Israeli men of fighting age who are coming back to their country. They are, getting involved as far as the operations are concerned. So all of those, the reckoning that you talked about, which should happen, of course, there should be a post-mortem. All of that has been left till a point, of course, before till Israel can sufficiently safeguard itself and defend itself. Coming to Professor Madhav Nalapat as well. Professor, I shudder to think what would have happened, what would have been the reaction of these terror apologists all around the world, as we find out, not just in India, but all around the world. It's the same design, the same playbook, the same words that get used to defend terrorists and cold-blooded murderers. I shudder to think what would have happened if Hamas terrorists would not have uploaded the images of what they were doing themselves. I almost feel the entire tragedy would have been washed completely.
Shivani, what they're basically implying, the apologists for Hamas, is that the IDF decapitated babies, whether dead or alive, which is such an absurd proposition that I'm surprised that anyone could even entertain that thought for a second. It's absurd. The babies were found decapitated, and you're basically implying that the decapitation was not done by Hamas, which is a completely, but then we're used to this, Shivani. It was no surprise to me that there were probably more processions in favor of Hamas in the streets of cities of Canada than they were in the Gaza Strip. It was no surprise. And whether it's Australia, the UK, the US, all these different countries, you have mass processions, basically in effect, in language which is not explicit, but which is implicit, supporting Hamas.
Yes.
And we have seen it happen in our case. A terrorist was gunned down in a gang war. And what did Prime Minister Justin Trudeau do? He blamed India for it. Now you are seeing Israel being asked to give a proportional response. What does it mean by proportional response? This is an existential battle. Hamas has made it very, very clear It wants to see the liquidation of not only the state of Israel,
but all
if you look at the charter of Hamas, they want the liquidation of the Jewish community.
Yes.
Now, for some time, I agree with Professor Berman that Hamas was basically some very unwise politicians backed Hamas. Qatar has backed Hamas. Turkey, a NATO member, has been backing Hamas pretty openly. It's still in NATO. Justin Trudeau justifies terrorists. He and Canada under Trudeau is still in NATO. So we are a bit confused here. But Shivani, this is not news to us. All I am saying is, in an existential war, it's either the Israelis or Hamas that is going to win the battle. And I have only two things to say. One, I pray that this conflict is confined to the Hamas and the Israelis, and it does not spread into places like Syria, Iran, other parts of the Middle East. And the point is that will play into the hands of Hamas. Hamas does not represent Muslims. Hamas does not represent the Islamic community. It's a fringe terror group, and they're attempting to cloak themselves in the garb of basically a very vibrant faith. So it's very important to understand that this conflict has to be localized, but in this conflict, Israel has no choice but to go all out to eliminate Hamas, because Hamas has made no secret from the very beginning of its plans to eliminate the entire Jewish community. And we all know in the 20th century which was the organization that attempted a similar fate. And unfortunately, a huge number of Jews, people who have created works of art, of literature, of science, of culture, they perished. And now you're seeing an organization repeating that very same ideology and being supported in Canada,
Professor,
Australia, UK, the US.
It is still easier to wrap your head around the fact that there will be radicals and fundamentalists, and these bodies or groups will raise their ugly head from time to time. But as I am wondering today, and I've been going through a lot of responses, not just by way of what the media is reporting in Israel, in other parts, but also by way of social media. And Irina, what is tougher to wrap your head around is that despite the images and the videos available, there were people who were willing to condone these actions. Imagine what would have happened if there were no videos. And in India, this is hitting very close to our hearts, because in the absence of video, a lot of people have given free pass or have convoluted facts or have hidden stories, buried stories like this. And if there were no videos of this, I think the world, some of the people, the way they have behaved, they would have denied this.
Unfortunately, even with the videos.
Irina first, then I'll come across to Eugene as well. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Unfortunately, even with the videos, there's still denial, there's still equivocations, there's still some sort of effort to equate.
Yes.
Yes, what Hamas did was indeed terrible, but Israel is also causing human civilian casualties in Gaza. So this sort of equivocation means that the evidence here is not the issue. It's not the issue whether Hamas did this or not. Beheadings, no beheadings. Everyone knows that Hamas is a terrorist organization. But they excuse the terror. They find justification for the terror, or they try to equivocate between Hamas, a dictatorship that is holding its own population by force, and Israel defending not only its own citizens, but all the international citizens and of all backgrounds and religions who've been targeted by Hamas. Let's just make it clear that Hamas is not only targeting Israel, it has boasted about getting support from Iran for potential attacks in other countries. It has international presence around the globe, just like other Iranian proxies and Islamist organizations. It's part of the Islamist network around the globe, and has international violent support that pursues attacks not only on Jews, not only on Israelis, but anyone who supports them in various countries.
Yes.
So Hamas is an international threat.
It is an international threat, and we've seen far too many terrorist groups like these that basically profess the same thing. Who their primary target is actually not relevant, but fundamentally it's the ideology that they profess, and all non-Muslims are at risk with that. Professor Eugene, do you think the larger Islamist network supporting organizations like Hamas will ever be brought to book, will ever be held accountable?
I mean, there's a name for the larger network supporting Hamas, and it's called the Islamic Republic of Iran, which organized these attacks, trained the people, provided them with material, picked the timing, and is also supporting the Assad regime in Syria and the Hezbollah militia that rules in Lebanon. This is an Iranian operation from the beginning. They have wrecked the Middle East. They're responsible for the destruction of Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, and of course, it's not an Arab country, but they're ready to fight Israel to the last Arab, it seems, and they don't care, about who gets hurt. And it has a terror network that is around the world, and they are aiming at a nuclear weapon, which will threaten the entire region, from Israel to India. Nowhere will be safe if they manage to achieve that.
Yes. Dr. Israel, I'll just take a final comment from you. Just how are Israelis holding up? What is it that is keeping all of you together and committed to fight for your country? How are the Israeli people really holding up as we speak?
Well, can I just, before that, I'll answer that question, I just quickly want to respond to Eugene. Iran's, first of all, Israel's IDF has said that it's not clear that Iran was actually behind this attack. Also, other experts, such as Raz Sibt at Tel Aviv University, has said that Iran clearly, obviously, was happy about this attack, but it's very far from clear that it was involvement in this attack is not unclear. We will find out more about this in the coming days. But Israelis have responded. There is right now great solidarity. Israel is fully behind its soldiers. The readiness to fight. You have Israelis coming back from abroad on planes en masse so that they can enlist for the military. You have people on the streets handing out flags. There is, on the one hand, of course, the outrage about the attacks, a lot of anger, a lot of distress. On the other hand, a lot of determination, steadfastness, determination to restore Israel's honor, to deal Hamas a blow, and to head on to confront Hamas and defeat Hamas. There's no question. There is solidarity here in Israel, unity. Of course, once this war is over, it's going to be a different story. But right now, there is solidarity and unity.
All right.
And a determination to win.
I leave it on that note. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. It's been, of course, a very distressing week, not just for Israelis, but really everyone around the world, just to witness the horror that has transpired in Israel and in many of its cities. Let's also bring you some more reports that we're getting from Israel, CNN News 18's network, and other reports that we're getting from Israel.
It was 7:11 a.m. on Saturday morning when the militants arrived at Be'eri kibbutz. Surveillance footage shows them lying in wait until a car arrives. They shoot the driver and enter the compound. More poured in on motorcycles, eerily at ease and in no apparent hurry. Thomas Hand heard the gunshots and immediately thought of his 8-year-old daughter Emily, who was staying with a neighbor.
She doesn't do it very often, but unfortunately that particular night, the Friday night, she went to sleep at her friend's house.
For 12 hours, he says he was pinned down under heavy gunfire, unable to reach his daughter, as Hamas went door to door, executing his neighbors.
Waiting. I'm thinking the army are going to be here soon. Just hold on a bit longer. And longer. And longer.
By the time the military gained control of Be'eri, this is what remained of the once tranquil community. Late Wednesday afternoon, Israeli forces let journalists in for the first time after days of pitched battles.
I saw how the soldier fight here, and I fight here myself in the first hour, only to get inside to the kibbutz, only to come from, apartment to apartment. It took a lot of time.
Does that weigh on your conscience to know how long it took?
We have a very difficult question to ask ourselves. Now we look forward to defend the people, to take the survival out of it, and to switch ourselves from defense to offensive operation. I'm sure that we ask ourselves all the difficult questions after it.
For now, there are more pressing questions. The bodies of more than 100 residents have been recovered, but the army says that many more are still missing.
You can see the amount of blood. This was a massacre.
And the full scale of the horrors that transpired here are just starting to come to light.
Pictures, family photographs on the wall.
Thomas waited 2 agonizing days before getting the news.
They just said, "We found Emily. She's dead." And I went, "Yes!" I went, "Yes," and smiled. Because that is the best news of the possibilities that I knew. That was the best possibility that I was hoping for. She was either dead or in Gaza. And if you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death. That is worse than death. The way they treat you. They'd have no food, they'd have no water. She'd be in a dark room filled with Christ knows how many people, and terrified every minute, hour, day, and possible years to come. So death was a blessing, an absolute blessing.
Dalhousie.
Mumbai is all set to host the 141st IOC session, which is coming to India after its 86th edition, which took place in New Delhi in 1983. The 141st IOC session will be held from 15th to 17th October in Mumbai, with the opening ceremony on the 14th. It will be preceded by meetings of the IOC Executive Board on 12th, 13th and 14th October. The IOC session, held at least once every year, is the general meeting of the members of the International Olympic Committee. Important decisions regarding host cities for upcoming events, inclusion or exclusion of sports and federations, and changes in the Olympic Charter are made at the IOC sessions. These sessions are the IOC's supreme organ, and decisions made at these sessions are final. More than 600 members of the sporting world's elite will attend the Mumbai session. These participants include 99 voting members and 43 honorary members representing a diverse range of sports. Additionally, the event will be attended by global media from over 100 nations, covering more than 50 sports at the Geo World Convention Center. The IOC's members include active athletes, former athletes, and the presidents or senior leaders of international sports federations or international organizations recognized by the IOC. India secured the hosting rights for the IOC session when a delegation led by Neeta Ambani, the first Indian woman to be elected as an IOC member, presented the country's case at the 139th IOC session in Beijing in February 2022. The bid received resounding support, with 99% of the participants voting in favor of Mumbai. 5 sports have been proposed by the LA28 Organizing Committee for the inclusion at the Asian Games in Los Angeles in 2028, pending approval, of course, from the International Olympic Committee. Prominently, these include cricket, flag football, a limited contact version of American football, lacrosse, baseball, softball, and squash. The proposal for the Games is being reviewed and will be put forth by the International Olympic Committee at a board meeting in Mumbai. Now remember, cricket was last part of the Olympics over a century ago in 1900. But unlike its only previous appearance at the Paris 1900 Games, cricket will not be contested as a 2-innings-a-side competition. Instead, the proposal foresees a limited overs 2020 format for the event. Fresh from his success at the Asian Games, I'm joined by none other than Neeraj Chopra, the man with the golden arm. Neeraj, again at Asian Games, बहुत pressure था आपके ऊपर, बहुत expectations थी, and I know you wouldn't be totally satisfied with what you managed, but gold medal फिर भी gold medal होता है.
जी बिल्कुल, हाँ काफ़ी प्रेशर मैं बोलूँगा कि थोड़ा इंजरी की वजह से जो दिक्कतें आ रही थी उसका था, बाकी तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं थी, पता था कि अच्छा कर लेंगे, लेकिन जिस तरीके से वो फर्स्ट थ्रो में गड़बड़ हुआ था उसकी वजह से थोड़ा माइंड डिस्टर्ब हुआ था, लेकिन वो भी अच्छे से हो गया क्योंकि कंपटीशन ही अच्छा खिंच गया था, तो बिल्कुल उसकी वजह से काफ़ी कोशिश की और उसकी वजह से मैंने पुश किया खुद को, पर अच्छा रहा कि लास्ट कंपटीशन में पहला ऐसा बड़ा गेम था जहाँ पे टाइटल डिफेंड करना था, वो कर पाए.
जी बिल्कुल. अगले साल आपसे और भी उम्मीदें होंगी ओलंपिक टाइटल डिफेंड करने के लिए.
हाँ कोई बात नहीं, अगले साल देखेंगे, अच्छी तैयारी करेंगे उसके लिए, बेस्ट तैयारी करके जाएंगे.
ओलंपिक की अगर बात करें तो आपने ओलंपिक मूवमेंट के लिए, ओलंपिक स्पोर्ट्स के लिए इंडिया में बहुत किया है. आपके गोल्ड मेडल से जो ओलंपिक स्पोर्ट्स को बढ़ावा मिला है, अब मुंबई में आईओसी का सेशन होने वाला है. आपको कैसा लगता है कि वो सेशन इंडिया में होना और उसमें ओलंपिक मूवमेंट को इंडिया में लाना, उससे और क्या फ़ायदा हो सकता है इंडिया को?
बिल्कुल, देखो कहीं ना कहीं बहुत बड़ी बात है कि आईओसी सेशन इंडिया में होना और इतने बड़ी बड़ी पर्सनैलिटीज़ आएंगी स्पोर्ट्स की, और आगे स्पोर्ट्स के लिए और बातें होंगी इंडिया के स्पोर्ट्स के लिए, और मुझे लगता है कि ये चीज़ हेल्प करेगी इंडिया को ग्लोबली दिखाने में, या कितनी कैपेबिलिटी है इंडिया के अंदर, या क्या कर सकते हैं हम, तो वो शायद लोगों को दिखेगा और बहुत हेल्पफुल होने वाला है ये.
क्योंकि इंडिया टारगेट कर रहा है कि 2036 तक वो भी ओलंपिक्स के लिए बिड करे. आपको लगता है कि ये हम शोकेस कर सकते हैं कि इंडिया में ओलंपिक्स हो सकता है जल्द?
बिल्कुल जी, दिखा सकते हैं. जिस तरीके से हमने पहले भी गेम्स करवाए हैं, एशियन गेम्स या कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स, और जिस तरीके से बोलते हैं काफ़ी अच्छे हुए हैं, तो हो सकता है. और मैं यही आशा करता हूँ कि ऐसा हो और हम देख पाएँ इंडिया में ओलंपिक्स होते हुए. ये भी मेरा एक ड्रीम है, तो बहुत अच्छा लगेगा. और सबसे अच्छी बात होगी कि इंडिया के अंदर और हमारे एथलीट्स की वजह से वो मेडल टैली बहुत ऊपर हो।
जी बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, एथलीट्स भी हमारा अच्छा करते जा रहे हैं और अब ओलंपिक आना इंडिया में बहुत अच्छा रहेगा। और ओलंपिक्स की अगर बात करें, क्योंकि क्रिकेट वर्ल्ड कप इंडिया में चल रहा है, तो ये भी बात हो रही है कि क्रिकेट को शायद अगले ओलंपिक्स में या लॉस एंजलिस में एंट्री मिल सकती है, उसके लिए ऊपर वोट होने वाला है। तो आप उसको कैसे देखते हैं? क्या आपको लगता है कि क्रिकेट को भी ओलंपिक्स में होना चाहिए?
बिल्कुल जी, जितने ज़्यादा स्पोर्ट्स होंगे ओलंपिक्स में उतना अच्छा है। और क्रिकेट का होना इसलिए अच्छा है हमारी कंट्री के लिए क्योंकि हमारा कंट्री काफ़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग है क्रिकेट में, स्टार्टिंग से हमारे बहुत अच्छे प्लेयर्स रहे हैं। और बिल्कुल जैसे अब एशियन गेम्स में या कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स में भी क्रिकेट हुआ, और जिस तरीके से सभी खिलाड़ी साथ में मिलते हैं, एक दूसरे से बातें करते हैं, तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है एक दूसरे को जान के। और ओलंपिक्स में भी होगा और ग्लोबली होगा क्रिकेट, और ज़्यादा लोग खेलेंगे तो और ज़्यादा पहचान मिलेगी, और बाकी स्पोर्ट्स के साथ और सभी खिलाड़ियों के साथ वो मिलजुल के सब रहेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा रहेगा।
चलिए, एक और गोल्ड मेडल हमारे लिए हो जाएगा ओलंपिक्स में।
हाँ बिल्कुल, यही आशा करते हैं कि होगा, और अच्छे अपने आगे खिलाड़ी आ रहे हैं तो बढ़िया ही करेंगे।
जी बिल्कुल, थैंक यू सो मच एंड मेनी कंग्रेचुलेशंस वंस अगेन। Well, sports is taking center stage in India, and to talk more about that during the World Cup also in India, I'm joined by none other than former Indian cricketer Yuvraj Singh and Laureus Goodwill Ambassador. You were here at a Laureus event, and the big news, the big update is that while you've been a Laureus Ambassador for a while, Neeraj Chopra, the man with the golden arm, is being inducted as well. Your thoughts on Neeraj's performance and his impact on Indian sport?
Yeah, I think I've been the Laureus Ambassador, Goodwill Ambassador for the last 6 years. Very proud to be associated with them because I feel that sports unites us. And for that reason, I've been united with Neeraj Chopra today and to induct him in the Hall of Fame Laureus Academy. It's very proud a moment to meet him because what he has done, he's changed the sport of Indian track and field, athletics. And just to get to know him, share the insights of a sportsman, what struggles you go through, and when you have success, how life changes. It was a good interaction.
But one thing we always say about Neeraj is that इतनी success के बाद भी वो बिल्कुल भी बदले नहीं है।
बिल्कुल देसी लड़का है। I love that about him. जब मैं आया ना बोला यूवी पाजी कैसे हैं, क्या हाल है? So I love that about him, that अपनापन नहीं गया, which is very important. Because I feel, once you have success, sometimes it changes you. But it's good to see that he's a humble kid, and hopefully, and he's very passionate to, bring more medals for the country. He's inspired the next generation to believe in track and field and athletics. That if this guy can do it, the next generation will also feel that I can do it as well.
नीरज ने वर्चुअली सारे मेडल्स जीते हुए हैं। उन्होंने ऑब्वियसली वर्ल्ड चैंपियनशिप का मेडल जीत लिया है, ओलंपिक्स का जीता था, एशियन गेम्स में वो जीत चुके हैं, कॉमनवेल्थ गेम्स में वो जीत चुके हैं। ओलंपिक्स की अगर बात करें तो आईओसी सेशन अभी मुंबई में होने वाला है और उसको लेके बहुत बज़ है, और ये हमारे लिए एक बहुत अच्छा मौका होगा ये दिखाने के लिए कि हम भी आगे जाके ओलंपिक्स होस्ट कर सकते हैं। आपको लगता है?
Why not? I think we have all the means, and I'm sure the way our infrastructure is going, we can definitely host Olympics in the coming years. Why not?
And one question I really wanted to ask you was that as a cricketer, how do you feel about cricket, being one of those sports that could make a re-entry into the Olympics? How would that be for you?
Well, that should have been done a couple of years ago. I don't know why it's happened now, but it's great if that can happen. And soon India will be a big contender to win Olympic gold in cricket.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of cricket, Yuvi, the World Cup is going on. That must be bringing back a lot of memories for you, a World Cup in India. What do you make of the Indian performance so far in the two matches?
I think pretty good. I felt that the first game we handled the pressure really well after losing few quick wickets. A bowler bowled really well. I used the conditions how we know in our country, and then obviously against Afghanistan we were aggressive in our batting. Rohit scored a brilliant 100 and took the game away. So I think we're getting used to situations, I would say pressure situations, because at the end of the day, when the semi-final game comes, that's going to be big pressure. So getting used to it is going to be important.
Talking of pressure, there's an India-Pakistan also coming up. What do you make of that contest?
Well, at the moment, the talk of the town, India-Pakistan game is always special. Whenever I talk to the guys, and I always tell them that look forward to the game. It's a big occasion, and you don't know whether these times are going to come back. You don't know when Pakistan is going to play in India. It's a big moment, and enjoy it.
Any other message apart from just the India-Pakistan match? Any other larger message to the Indian team? What does it take to win a World Cup, maybe?
Well, they all know what it means to win a World Cup, and we all know what it takes to win a World Cup, right? It takes, it can take everything out of you, especially in your country. So I always, whoever I talk to, just tell them, just put your headphones on, focus on your game, and it's just a matter of 40-45 days.
One of the worries for India before that India-Pakistan match has also been, the health of Shubman Gill. Unlikely that he could feature in that match. You had a word with him. Anything you told him?
I did. I told him कि मैं 2 बार डेंगू में खेला हूँ और वर्ल्ड कप में भी मेरी तबीयत ठीक नहीं थी तो जरा खड़ा हो जा और खेल because it's a very important game. Anyways, he would have played because if he's feeling better. But to bounce back from a viral or a dengue, it's really hard because it sucks everything from your body. So I'm sure that he really wants to play that game as well. And everybody looking forward for him to play that game.
You played with cancer as well, so that was even harder.
Well, I won't say it's harder or this is not hard because this is also it's draining. But the point is that when you're playing for your country, you have to put your body on line. And even if it's 50% fit, I would like to see him playing that game.
The IOC session is coming up in India only for the second time and after a gap of 40 years. So as the IOA president, how excited are you and how do you think this will help India and Indian sports to host this session in India after such a long time?
This is the huge occasion for our India in Olympic movement, and it's the good opportunity for us to showcase our capability for to the IOC members. We'll show that we are ready to host Olympic in our country, and it's the good opportunity for us to showcase our capability for to the IOC members, especially support of the Nita Ambani's IOC member.
Can I ask you, what do you think India needs to do to be ready to host such a big games in terms of infrastructure or in terms of the effort from the government and the IOA together?
Our Prime Minister also is vision is there to host the 2036 Olympics. So we are getting lot of positive support from the government, and we are already have a good infrastructure facilities in Ahmedabad, and most of our place, I don't know where we are going to, but I think we can do that. And the same, we are, only our worries was the world standard performance. Now we are coming up in performance level also. When we are hosting the Olympics in our country, we should be in strong in medal tally. Finally that is happening. When we are have a vision on hosting the Olympic, so same time we have started winning the medal also.
Tel Aviv, and as you can see, sirens sounding.
क्या सही है सायरन बचा बजा 30 सेकंड के अंदर हमें भागना होता है.
Massive barrage of rockets coming in here.
The sirens have gone off. People are taking cover. We got off the bus. People are taking cover.
Saturday's attack by Hamas marked the worst breach in Israel's defenses in decades. According to a Reuters source, Hamas deployed a force of about 1,000 fighters, organized into specialized units. They've been training in Gaza since the last conflict in 2021, sometimes in plain sight, the source said. Here's how they managed to catch Israel off guard. This footage released by the armed wing of Hamas is said to show fighters training ahead of the operation. They're using paragliders, and a source says their exercises included building a mock Israeli settlement to practice a military landing. Reuters could not verify the date and locations of the videos, but the training would have come amid a careful campaign of deception by Hamas, which had convinced Israel that it did not want to fight. It refrained from military operations against Israel and was careful about leaks. Even many Hamas leaders weren't aware of the plans, according to the Reuters source. A spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces admits they were surprised. Hamas separated its fighters into several specialized groups to carry out the attack in the air and on the ground. It fired thousands of rockets at around 6:30 a.m. on Saturday. The bombardment was intended to cause shock and confusion, while providing Hamas fighters with cover to break the fortified fence surrounding Gaza. Teams of fighters on hang gliders, or motorized paragliders, flew over the border and secured terrain for the main ground assault.
Viewers, Israel is angry, and as more and more details of Hamas barbarity surface, it is becoming difficult for the unity government there to ignore calls for exemplary action against the terror group based in Gaza. The Israel Defense Force says that Hamas carried out a massacre under the banner of the Wahhabi terror group ISIS in a kibbutz. It tweeted photographs of banners as proof. They're on your screens, viewers. Amid statements that it is planning a ground invasion, the IDF has declared that Gaza will become a tent city. This is their quote, a tent city, and every building will be razed to the ground. A look at the visuals coming in from Gaza. You can see those pictures to the left of your screens, viewers. And it appears that Israel is serious about following through with its pronouncement.